Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Wednesday, June 12th. It's certainly harder to get going in the middle of E3, certainly. It tends to, even though I'm trying to stay pretty far away from doing too much around the E3, I'm still getting the information, the trailers, one way or the other, and that causes a lot of extra time to be wasted. And I'm also doing recordings for the pre-recorded Steam follow list cleanup. I did the first half of games starting with the letter T last night, and that went not as long as maybe some of the other ones because I stopped halfway through. But certainly went long, ran into a lot of games that were Japanese visual novels, which hadn't really been happening up until that point. As for Hearthstone, we have 2 daily quests on the main account, and the Tavern Brawl. Dr. Boom has spun up a brand new batch of powerful decks, and you are the test subject. Take control of a newly improved mech deck. So just win with whatever he gives me. Alright, good enough. So this might be another incident, like almost every Hearthstone stream where I'm gonna just try to have a shorter stream so I can get some free time to work on making pre-recorded footage or take a bit of a break. It is also, I guess, worth mentioning that that at this point, my feeling is E3 has covered all of the big announcements. E3 does go until the end of the week, as I understand it, but after the weekends, after Mondays and Sunday, Monday, Tuesday announcements, there's not a lot that's being shown to the public through presentations. I don't think there are any more press conference presentations of note, and so everything is either being shown on the show floor, which usually means it's not that important, or it's being shown behind hidden doors. E3 with Giant Bomb in particular, how they have these late night get-togethers that are kind of shows, kind of interviews, but really feel a lot like they're just
extraordinary.
They're just friendly meetings or friendly get-togethers. Kind of is one of the best and most apparent incidences where you see some cases of video game journalists getting too cozy with video game developers, particularly in Giant Bomb's late night recap videos, where it's not very professional at all. And I imagine behind closed doors, there are some contracts being signed and some job offers being handed out at E3. Although I don't recall there ever being an incident where a case where a bunch of people announced their new starting position or their new job at a new company within the next couple of months of E3. It's probably because they stagger it out. Let's see. And even now that all the presentations have started happening, I've started to see a few games that actually look decent get released on Steam. Well, it looks like I'm gonna win here. So let's cover this game. We have a game here on Steam called Flux Caves, which might be an asset flip walking simulator. It might be a attempt at a Portal clone. It's kind of hard to tell what it is. Yeah, it looks like there might be something here as far as a 3D pipe puzzle game. I don't know if this really could be a good game, but it's $5.99, and it's come out right in the middle of E3. That's hardly a just basic, low-effort asset flip type game. Let's see.
Here's precision.
Stored energy. This in return. Let's see. Kind of Funny Games had a presentation. It's very weird that Kind of Funny Games is allowed a presentation. Really, when you look at it, there's kind of a high number of weird
Primitive.
organizations that have been allowed to have these kind of presentations, and it doesn't make sense. The PC Gamer Show doing a PC games show kind of feels like you're doing that out of necessity, because who else could or should run a PC game show? Arguably, if you're a PC games publisher, those publishers should get together and have like a publisher Devolver Digital style shows, but then that would be a waste of time too. But then Kind of Funny Games doesn't feel like it really has any business to be doing to be at this show at E3 at all. Alright.
My power over you.
That's an interesting spell.
Let's go.
Regardless, things were shown at the Kind of Funny Games showcase, so we'll be talking off this. A game called Forgone shows off stylish combat action. It looks like this. Unfortunately, most of the articles from TechRaptor today, and basically everybody, are these really short articles that maybe have a trailer. This looks interesting as a hack and slash platforming style game. Yeah, this looks good. The one thing I would say is Kind of Funny Games in particular is despite its other things that can be said about it, certainly, it's always been kind of a shill for PlayStation games. So you're having this show that is kind of a PlayStation happy show. Even though Sony is not bothering to have an event. Although we'll have to see how much of that really is true, and how many of these games that are potentially on the PS4. Forgone, for instance, actually is only on Steam. Well, that was a nice and easy tavern brawl. I want to check something here and see when this ends. Ends in 5 days. Yeah. they have changed how long tavern brawls last, and that's nice. That's a nice way to fix some of the problems of the past. And all of these are going to be dusted anyways, so the only thing I could have hoped for was legendaries or golds. It would be nice if the Tavern Brawl stopped giving me classic card packs at this point. It would be more helpful if I was being handed. I'm gonna play casual on Shaman, and then maybe I'll come back and play some Paladin on ranked. Let's see. Next game mentioned is called Lost Ember, which just has a picture here of a wolf. This game is coming out for the PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, so basically everything. Although, basically everything is now kind of inaccurate. Because of Stadia and other things.
Is someone injured?
Just gonna end your turn. Gamatsu has an article here. Falcon Age is coming to PC this summer. The PC version will ship with new content. If I recall correctly, I think Falcon Age was a game that actually wasn't very well received. It looks like it would be an interesting idea of being a falconer and having this falcon that would work with you and dab and fist bump you, but I think it kind of boils down to being a pretty generic game otherwise. So unless Falcon Age launches with new content that then also fixes some of the problems, I don't know how you fix that. Let's see. Gamatsu's next game we have is a forced perspective first-person puzzler called Superliminal. I watched the trailer on this already just to make sure it was the game I thought it was, and it actually wasn't. So you grab objects and you change the forced perspective on them and they get bigger and larger, and then it kind of changes it up eventually to the point where you're solving this puzzle to force the perspective to make a cube appear, and once it's lined up perfectly it actually becomes a cube. So there's a couple of different ideas here in this game that look interesting, although it kind of is just a gimmick, so I don't know how you fix that too well. It needs clearly something else. Next game we have from Tech Raptor is called Lucifer Within Us, which I haven't watched the trailer for this yet. Seems like this is just a stealth positioning murder mystery game, kind of just like a point and click adventure game. Yeah, that looks slightly interesting in its gameplay mechanic, but no telling if any of it is actually anything. Need to be able to play this in between here next turn. Attack, attack, then play this and do that. And then ideally be able to play that. And that's certainly not going to work because I don't have enough mana to do all of that in one turn. Let's see. Next article from Kinda Funny Games. Brave Earth Prologue reveals new trailer. Brave Earth looks like an NES game, so I'm hoping it actually is a release of an old NES style game and not just a new game that is using the retro perspective. This seems to me like it probably is a new game just using the retro perspective. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I could ever really be sold on playing a game that looks like an NES game coming out in 2019 or 2020. It's just not visually appealing. People did not make games that looked 8-bit because they wanted them to look 8-bit. They played them because, or made them look that way because that's all the graphics cards could handle. There, that worked quite nicely. That was a lucky move. Right. So this and this next turn. That didn't work as well as I would have liked it to. Guess play this and then play this and then play this and then I guess do this. Next article we have Undying shows the struggle of a mother and child in the apocalypse. So here's another announcement trailer. E3 now in retrospect is really just a waste of time. I have not felt more justified in trying to have a limited experience here because of just how it is just a bunch of announcements of games that probably won't come out. This game is kind of a great example. This looks like a Unity asset flip game, and it's trying to sell itself as something different or special, but it almost certainly is going to just fall into the category of every other Unity zombie asset flip game that has come to Steam.
Shall we make a storm?
Let's yeah, almost none of the games that have been announced from at E3 have been given release dates. A lot of them are barely even telling you what platforms they're coming out on. This year in particular is kind of a non-starter because of the Xbox Project Scarlet, next Xbox, and the PlayStation 5 looming over it.
Shall we make a storm?
Let's see. There we go. We'll just win. Might as well. Look for victories. Next game we have to consider is called Cyberpunk Volleyball with Guns in Gunsport. I was looking at a volleyball game on the fall list, and it occurred to me, yeah, volleyball is this oddly not family friendly sport in reality, because this whole trailer is just showing a panning scene to these characters and that's it. So this is kind of it's kind of a shooting a ball back and forth. I really wouldn't call this volleyball by realistic standards. Again, this is not a game that looks particularly interesting either. It looks simplistic. It's coming to the PC and Xbox One and PlayStation. But yeah, real world volleyball, because the sponsors, the people that pay to put the small amount of coverage of sports games coverage on TV, have the men and the women in moderately skimpy bikinis. It's kind of not something you'd want a 5 or 6 year old to be watching, unless you're fine with them seeing people in mildly skimpy bikinis, which I think most parents would be fine with. But there's kind of, if you had a junior high school volleyball team playing, I don't think would be wearing that, and I don't think you'd be comfortable having junior high school kids of age 12, 13, 14 in the kind of bikinis you see that the professional volleyball people wear. And so when you work backwards, what I'm thinking is then also volleyball is pretty violent and somewhat dangerous for what is actually done. I don't think you would, in the same way you would have a little league football or soccer, I don't think you would have a little league volleyball. Maybe something like that exists, but I really don't. I've really never heard of it, and certainly I'm not one to have known anything about this, but it seems like if you are going to become a professional volleyball player, you start playing volleyball at earliest in high school, and then you move on in college. So my whole point in what probably is just a rambling mess of words is that there is that weirdly family unfriendliness to it, and that is followed in video game releases. There's sports games that try to cover everything, but the majority, the only volleyball games I've seen as far as video games are the Dead or Alive beach volleyballs, where they are in extremely skimpy bikinis, and that's the whole point of the game. I haven't ever seen a video game trying to emulate volleyball as the main game that did it in a Splatoon style way or a Nintendo style way. Although maybe Nintendo has made some games like that. Maybe it's also volleyball just gets merged together with several other sports because it's not that unique or special. That could be it too. Of course, that was really just one of many rambling thoughts I think I had while covering, looking at games on the follow list, and was getting very distracted, and I'm getting pretty distracted now. Moving on to the next article, Police Stories was announced, which again looks like it might just be a low effort game. Yeah, a police simulation, kind of like SWAT, is
Job's done.
slightly interesting, but this pixelated graphics style doesn't look that good. Yeah, this does not look like a particularly interesting game. It's not super surprising that most of the announcements, I wouldn't be surprised if all the announcements from Kind of Funny Games are of not even, maybe barely AA tier games, maybe single A games, maybe just a bunch of indie games that wanted some coverage. I don't know if I'd even, if I was an indie game developer, I don't know if I'd even want to bother to try to have any coverage at E3. Sure, I guess they wouldn't know that it was already destined to be a rather long experience because of these 60 games announced at the Xbox presentation. But even at an average E3, unless I'm releasing a AAA game, it's just going to be so drowned out in the noise. Thinking about last year's presentations, The Last of Us 2, nothing has happened with that. There was kind of no point in that being announced. No Way Out was a game that had no reason to be announced during that time. The Silent Man had no reason to really be out during that time. The Quiet Man, yeah, was an awful game. Pretty much everything that happens at the EA showcase this year or last year had very little reason to be presented at E3. It would have been much better if they'd just done some EA Play Direct videos to cover each of those games individually. Microsoft's presentation really is the only presentation that makes sense as a big conference, and it only makes sense because they have a ridiculous amount of games that they were announcing. And even then, that was too many games announced. It would have been better if they had spent half of their time talking about games and talking about 30, maybe even 20 of those games more, instead of just having a numbers show. Moving on, we have a game here on Steam called Looking for Heals, which is H-E-A-L-S, which I guess means a player looking to be healed, not looking for bad guys who will supposedly work with other bad guys. Yep, so there's actually several games where you play as the healer in a game. This is early access, but I'll give it a follow. It looks potentially good, maybe. It's weird that so many games of that style have been coming out recently, or announced recently. Next article, we have a Metroidvania game called Asteron Tears of the Earth as a demo. This is another 8-bit NES looking game. Like, these games in particular, no reason to even know about them until they come out. I'll just see them when they come out on Steam. Next article, we have Summer Catcher's release window, which is another 8-bit looking game. Looks like a mobile game. Yeah, this looks like a mobile game and a racing game more than anything else. I see nothing here of any interest. I imagine most people had the good sense not to even bother trying to follow what was being covered by Kind of Funny Game Showcase. Let's see. Next article, Etherborn release date revealed. I've never even heard of this game. Apparently it's a puzzle platformer. E for everyone. Let's see. Yeah, this looks like an MC Escher platforming game. Might be slightly interesting. It might be kind of nothing. It might cause motion sickness. Coming spring 2019, or July 18th for PC, Xbox One, PS4, and Switch. I would imagine if it was Kind of Funny Games' intention to emphasize PlayStation games being released, this would probably be the worst instance in which to try that, because I imagine aren't going to be a lot of PlayStation exclusives coming out over the course of the next year.
He's just the beginning.
Next article we have is a ground console port announced for summer of 2019. I have no idea what a ground is. All you have is this picture. So is any of this information really useful when you've never heard of the game in the first place? Alright, let's play a little ranked. Gamatsu has an article, Code Vein launches September 27th. Okay, so the anime Dark Souls game has a full release date now. We may have already known that. I swear some of the games that were announced were things I already knew about. So either they were leaked or they had been announced before. Or there have been games that are so similar to the games announced that I'm just confusing it in my head, which might also very well be the case.
Converting stored energy.
Next article we have Bloodroots demo now out. Is this game Bloodroots, another kind of not AAA looking game. This looks fine. It looks like it's a bloody hack and slash combo style game. I can imagine it being a little exhausting though if you have to play the entirety of the game, or you want to play the entirety of the game moving as fast as possible. There needs to be some falling action in a trailer that doesn't show even a little bit of that. Is a little concerning. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article, World of Visions, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius is coming to the West. I believe this is one of two mobile games that Square Enix announced. The Square Enix presentation was, I would say, at least 87% around Final Fantasy announcements. They really had nothing else. I still kind of feel like Final Fantasy, well, no, not Final Fantasy, but Square Enix itself is in this slowly dying pattern where the Japanese management company of Square Enix only really cares about selling Japanese products, and particularly Final Fantasy products, and so they're gonna cancel anything that's not a Final Fantasy product or a Japanese product, probably. If there's anything left that hasn't already been canceled. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a slow system of people leaving that company and projects either getting finished and not being that interesting, or new projects not starting, or projects not being finished at all. Now, one game that might be a slight argument against that feeling that I've been having for about a year now is Oninaki, which launches August 22nd in North America and Europe. This is the game, the RPG game that is a JRPG around the idea of like people are not allowed to mourn the dead, or you're part of these group called the Watchers that I think kills the dead spirits or exorcises the spirits. It seems like a weird story, and it's selling itself on that weird story, but when you really look at the game, it looks like it's a just generic JRPG. And Square Enix's position in the world, I don't think changes if it has a generic JRPG. Yeah, one more generic JRPG going for it. The exact same thing can be said for this article. Romancing Saga 3 and Saga Scarlet Grace Ambitions are coming to the West. Scarlet Grace JRPGs. Let's see what this trailer is. Yeah. And as I'm going through the fall list and trying to decide what are the top 10 RPGs or possibly the top 10 JRPGs to cover, I don't think Scarlet Grace makes it. I don't think Oninaki makes it as a brand new series. It's kind of only disheartening to see so many RPGs scheduled to be released in the next couple of years, all from one company. And that pattern doesn't really change with this article. Final Fantasy XIII Remaster officially announced. This would be different than the Final Fantasy VII Remaster that's in development. There's been a lot of talk about how Final Fantasy VII's Remaster takes away the turn-based combat that was originally in the game and really rebuilds the whole thing from the ground up. And they don't even know how many episodes they're going to have to break it up into and sell it to you as full games. But yeah, the 7 remake is going to probably be at least $180 when all is said and done. At least 3 $60 releases. Whereas this remaster looks like it is a visual remaster only for 13. Which would be a good excuse for me not to play Final Fantasy XIII now. There is a urban legend that Final Fantasy VIII's source code was lost, so it's an interesting thought experiment to question how could you remaster something if all the source code is lost. It actually would be relatively easy to remaster it if you just take an approach of a hands-off approach to the programming, which is to say, one assumes that the Final Fantasy VIII game had in it files that were 3D models. If you just change those 3D models to a slightly more polished looking 3D model and copy and paste over the original files, you could remaster the graphics pretty easily. Same is true for the audio, and that would leave the gameplay mechanics completely untouched, and you wouldn't have to have the source code. It wouldn't also be incredibly difficult to it wouldn't be incredibly difficult to decompile and the code, the executable code, and run that through a program and have it rebuild the source code without any of the comments or the file structure or the coding structure You would then have some code that you could work with, but it would be effectively a mess and very difficult to program with. I also find it slightly questionable that you would lose the source code, but that is kind of believable too. It is a reasonable thought.
Put your faith in the light.
That something like that might happen, and I would not put it past a Japanese developer to be the kind of developer to do something like that. It's just accidentally delete an entire game. That being said, it makes very little sense for Final Fantasy 13 to lose the source code. It would make a lot more sense for Final Fantasy 1, 2, or 3 to lose their source code. Yeah, but I don't think this remaster of 13 is in any way going to be amazingly good. Speaking of the games I don't think will be amazingly good, Square Enix presentation had the new Marvel Avengers trailer announcement video. To me, it looked like they did facial scans of the voice actors to make the faces of the Avengers. None of these characters look visually appealing in the faces, nor do they look like the versions of those characters in the in the movie series. So it's not pretty to put it directly. It's just not a pretty game visually, and they really didn't show anything as far as the actual gameplay and how that's going to work when you have 5 or more Avenger characters with unique and vastly different abilities all fighting together. This is being made by Crystal Dynamics, so that's the Tomb Raider people, which is then questionable because the Tomb Raider reboots, with the exception of the bow technology, which was added pretty early, kind of just evolved into first-person shooting, and so I don't know how you could have the Avengers game devolve into first-person shooting again with guns. So I imagine it being a Marvel game, it will get the money it needs to be at least a decent seller. So I imagine the Marvel game, which I don't even think has a release date yet, will also receive a delay at some point. Let's do this.
The battle. Reporting for duty. Test me, child.
A little surprised I won there. TechRaptor has the same article. Saga games are coming to the West. Scarlet Grace games. We already talked about this. This is one of the Scarlet Grace games, and that was a little surprising because I thought all the Scarlet Grace games were 3D visuals. I guess maybe the Saga series is older than I thought it was. It probably is a perfect example of a game series that's been popular in Japan for a couple decades and it just never came over. And by popular, I mean mediocrely popular.
Uther versus Rexar.
Let's try not to go over the same articles from 2 different sources. See, TechRaptor has an article. Outriders trailer shows off multiplayer action in the scary world. This game, Outriders, is perhaps one of the only few hyper realistic looking games that doesn't look like a JRPG. That being said, that trailer showed me absolutely nothing. It's being developed by the team development team of People Can Fly, which is the company that made Bulletstorm, which is, I guess, the last thing of note that they made. So it is probably going to be a hyper action first person shooter game. I don't think it's going to turn into a slower hide and cover first person shooter game. And I really wouldn't trust People Can Fly to do much of anything else. Gamatsu has the same article. Outriders is coming out for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. But of course, this trailer. This is a different trailer. By the way, Steam, YouTube has rolled out a kind of more access, easier way to claim and discover if people are stealing and uploading your videos on YouTube, and I'm hoping that they did it right and programmed it right. Otherwise, we might start to see a considerable amount of more copyright claims of sorts. I have yet to see that though. And if anything, what I've been seeing on YouTube is a considerably large amount of random channels seem to not have ads on them anymore, and yet the channels that do have ads seem to all have moved over to 2 ads in a row. So that feels like that is some default thing that you couldn't have opted out of. Either that, or all YouTubers that do have ads on their channel are just incredibly greedy, and it's super annoying. It's like really annoying to have 2 ads try and play in a row, even though I skip almost 100% of all ads anyways. It, like, just seeing it there and knowing that not only are they going to try to play one, that they're going to try to play the other, and they absolutely do not have a commercial ad base for this, so it's the exact same ads over and over again. It's almost as if YouTube is intentionally trying to ruin YouTube by having more annoying commercials than what any other service, including cable TV, has. Let's see. I think we already talked about this. War of Visions, Final Fantasy, Brave Exodus. This is, I'm pretty sure, just a cell phone game though. They're really pushing into Final Fantasy territory. Like, this looks interesting visually, but I don't think that's what the game really is. I think this is probably what the game actually is a Risk-like overlay. Yeah, I don't think there's a single bit of gameplay in that trailer at all. Alright, well, there goes my short win streak of 1. We don't need to do anything on the Americas account, so let's just move over to the European account. We need to have the Tavern Brawl to deal with. Tech Raptor has an article here. Final Fantasy, is that 14 there? Shadowbringers? I don't even recall this announcement. Like, I wasn't paying a huge amount of attention to the Final Fantasy, the Square Enix presentation, but yeah, it was just Final Fantasy this, Final Fantasy that, Final Fantasy this. and then Avengers at the end. It felt like you could have pretty easily changed some things up and had the Avengers in the middle or at the beginning, or at least maybe had some people come out and speak to break up the Final Fantasy announcements a little bit longer. But again, I wasn't really paying attention, so maybe they did do that. There was a Japanese lady who came out in one of the presentations, and she was very kawaii, cute, to say it in Japanese, and that's how the Japanese people took it, and she seemed to be pretty happy to be there and energetic. And there's a lot of manga artists and aspiring manga artists in Japan, so they were drawing on Twitter pictures of her as an anime character, so they quickly became enthralled with her. So I imagine she'll show up again at other presentations. A few SJWs out there, for lack of a better term, were being offended on her behalf, and it's like, people liked her. They drew pictures of her. That's not really that offensive. Maybe there was a few pictures out there that were a bit lewd. I didn't see any, but even at that point, that's still not really reason to be offended on somebody else's behalf. If she's upset by it, we'll never see her on the stage again. But her enthusiasm was very much appreciated by the audience in a world where most of the presenters are not hyper enthusiastic, and they just come off as robotic and stiff, or pre-planned and overly polished.
The end is coming!
Is there anything that I can do here? Not really, just steal cards, I guess. This Gematsu article says Final Fantasy 13 Remaster is coming to the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So the PC part of that is important to me personally. I might be in a pretty good position to just not buy any of the Final Fantasy games until the remasters start pouring in left and right. That being said, there is also a very good chance that none of these games actually get released in the remainder of my lifetime, for as long as it takes Square Enix to finish a remaster of Final Fantasy. The approval of the remaster of 13 probably is a direct response to the fact that they lost the producer of Final Fantasy 15, and they don't have anyone to take the realms to make a Final Fantasy 16.
Behold!
Square Enix had this top-down racing circuit Superstars game, which is one of the few non-Final Fantasy games available. And this is just showing off cars and having people talk on the screen for what looks like just a kind of generic, could easily be confused for a mobile game style game. Yeah, there's nothing visually appealing about this game at all, though. And if this top-down racing car game is Square Enix's indie project for the next couple years, they've basically got nothing to show. I could easily see Square Enix pulling out of next year's presentation at E3, and Microsoft potentially being the only major company to have presentations at E3 at all. And Microsoft has enough money to just keep on doing it for the fun of it, or for the bragging rights, for whatever little bragging rights that would give you. Man, I have like no cards. What in the world is this deck? Let's see. Square Enix also released The Last Remnant remastered on Nintendo Switch. They just announced it and said it was available right now. So a secret announcement for a JRPG that's not very recognizable is kind of ridiculous. And my only guess is that they saw their own schedule on how many other Final Fantasy and JRPGs they're releasing, and they needed to get this one out quick. That's my only guess. The other thing to take from this is almost certainly The Last Remnant's not that good. Let's see.
Quickly.
Let's see. Next article we have Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remake is also coming to Android. Another mobile game. Really does not stop. It really did not stop.
Require my assistance?
It's barely even news.
Aha!
Gamatsu has an article, Raiden 5 Director's Cut for the Switch launches the 25th of what? Of July. This is just a Switch flying shoot 'em up game. It doesn't interest me in any way. Alright.
Behold the army of Zandala!
Job's done.
Next we have an article here. Cygames is going to attend Anime Expo 2019. Granblue Fantasy Versus to be playable. I think we will start to seeing a larger trend of anime style games going to Anime Expo and showing off at Anime Expo. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually it ports itself over to announcing games at Anime Expo. I'd have to do a little bit more research to figure out if Anime Expo is an expo that is good or one that I would consider that'd be a little bit problematic. I'm gonna do this. Looky there, that worked. Great.
Behold the army of Zandala!
Job's done.
Whoops.
Let's see. Well, I didn't win that one, but I didn't stand a great chance of winning that one. The Tavern Brawl as the mage, or whatever character I was playing. That was hard. Kind of funny game showcase again. Adam's Ascending gameplay demo. I've never heard of this game, Adam's Ascending. It probably, if I was to guess, is
Your soul shall be mine.
some kind of space game? This kind of looks just like an asset flip game, frankly. That's really what this feels like. It's just a bunch of asset flips all over the place. I don't know if that's actually some kind of first-person shooter or exploration game, or if it's just an adventure game or what. Just a walking simulator. Let's see. Stronghold Warlords announced by Firefly Studios. I don't know the Stronghold series. Yeah, this really comes down to a bunch of games getting announced that this looks like it's a board game being turned into
Almost out of time. So many possibilities.
into a digital version. Yeah, that was not much of a trailer. Yeah. Final Fantasy... not Final Fantasy. E3 really is just a time to feel dumb because all of these... I wanted to call them cockroach companies, for lack of a better term, but everybody just comes out from hiding under rocks to announce games, and it's then they go right back under those rocks for another year. Meanwhile, in comparison, as I'm doing the follow list cleanup, I'm just like 99% of all games that are on the follow list, I'm like, this isn't good enough. Why is this even on the follow list? This is nowhere good enough as far as a game that I would want to cover. And I think a significant amount of the games that were announced at Kinda Funny Games in particular are going to be games that aren't going to be good enough to even make it to be on my follow list, let alone the wish list. Gamma Sutra has a confirmation article here I opened. Microsoft did pick up the Psychonauts 2 publishing rights from Starbreeze, as Starbreeze is close to being bankrupt. It is also, I think, worth mentioning that Ooblets has split away from Double Fine now that Double Fine is is owned by Microsoft. So the Ooblets game that was supposed to be like a Pokemon style game is now going to find another publisher or self-publish. So there definitely was some shuffling of contracts in Double Fine being acquired. Here we have a game on Steam called Copper Bell that apparently is coming soon. I guess it doesn't need to be on my follow list. This looks like this might be a simplistic platformer adventure game. Might be good, might be bad. Although, again, why announce your game and have a Steam page when in the middle of E3? Because I don't think this was shown at any E3 presentation or anything like that. Even if it was, why try to advertise a game like Copper Bell in the middle of E3? Game of Sutra has an article here. Ubisoft's new Uplay Plus subscription launches for PC this year, Stadia in 2020. The Uplay Plus is a $14.99 monthly subscription service that offers access to over 100 Ubisoft games on PC, similar like other services like Xbox Games Plus. Uplay Plus will offer its subscribers access to new and upcoming games, including betas and early access releases in some cases. So, yeah. Uplay, we knew that they were changing what Uplay meant to them for about a year now, and that they were going to probably launch a service like that. It's not really a great service, frankly, and Steam people in particular would like to be able to buy and own Ubisoft games without going through Uplay if they could, and having a secondary Uplay account. The main thing I think that kills Uplay Plus is just a lack of support of a lot of those games. So if you're given access to play Assassin's Creed 2, for instance, or 3, I doubt the multiplayer servers on those are still enabled and playable, and even if they are enabled, the player base is going to be incredibly small. If you don't want to play any Assassin's Creed game, then Uplay Plus is probably going to be pretty useless to you. And I can't off the top of my head think of many other Ubisoft games of note that would make it reasonable to have a service like that. Was that $14.99 a month or a year? I hope that was $14.99 or $19.99 a year, because if it really is $15 a month, ooh, you are paying way too much for that. Yeah, I closed the tab, so I guess I could maybe try and open that up. I still have no RAM. There you go. Yeah. Oh my god, it is $14.99 per month subscription service to probably barely over 100 Ubisoft games. That is incredibly expensive. Incredibly high. What am I supposed to be doing here? Why would I be shuffling in cards my entire hand into my deck? I literally don't understand what I'm trying to do. I can make extra copies of those. There's some crazy strategy here, and I don't understand it at all. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Ninja Box launches September 26th in Japan. No clue what Ninja Box is, though. It's some Bandai Namco kids game. Yeah. Probably not coming out to the West. It's a secret base building RPG, according to the subtitle of it. Puzzles and Dragons Gold has been announced for the Switch. That makes some sense. A mobile game that was pretty popular going to the Switch. That makes sense. Some small sense. Alright. This. And then this. Gamatsu has an article here. Darksiders Genesis 24 minutes of E3 gameplay. So there's a video here you could watch. It seems like you can switch between the four horsemen, and you're doing platforming and dual twin stick fighting
So
and
many
shooting.
options.
There might be a game here that's fine enough to play. It's just not really going to have, I think, any real connection to the Darksiders series, or really need to be played by fans of the Darksiders series. And I imagine because it's being labeled as a Darksiders game when it probably originally wasn't even going to be that, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a pretty bad game. For that reason too.
Too soon.
Kama Sutra is really giving us all the articles that are answering specific questions. So Microsoft's next gen Project Scarlet console will still have a disk drive. There wasn't a major amount of question there, but it's nice that somebody actually asked that. Is like, yes, does it have a disk drive? One assumes it has to be a it would have to be a Blu-ray disc drive. It really wouldn't make a lot of sense any other way. Yeah, there's not really any improvement on Blu-ray other than more layers. So yeah, of course we'll have a disk drive. The only thing that could have been slightly interesting there is if it actually had a multi-disc drive instead, and that would make a little bit of sense. If you could load 4, 5, 6 Blu-ray discs into a disc drive, that would be nice. But most disc changers, last time I heard about any, had a tendency to scratch discs, so that's probably not a smart move. But yeah, I could totally see wanting to buy at least 3 different games and having at least 3 of those different games in the tray, in a disc swapping tray of an Xbox. And then Xbox Scarlet is probably still going to be a huge brick of a console, so there's almost certainly room for it. Right. Replace your hand and deck with legendary minions. Would that do something?
This one turned out nicely.
Alright, I'm just gonna fill my hand.
You the soul agents!
That didn't.
Keep away! Not a valid target. Keep away! Not done.
Too soon.
Moving on, Gematsu has an article, we already talked about the Square Enix uncertain on how many games will span the Final Fantasy VII Remake project. It is also, I think, sort of worth mentioning that I think her name is Tifa, this character here. They changed her outfit and I think lowered her bust size in the remaster to make her a little bit more realistically proportioned. I don't think anybody is actually super upset about that. Remember, Final Fantasy VII originally would have been extremely low polygon things. It's kind of like a comparison to the bust size of some of the Tomb Raider 1 characters and how that looked very low polygonical and huge compared to the Tomb Raider reboot. I don't recall that being the major problem with the Tomb Raider reboot, is that our cleavage changed. I think that'd probably be true for a lot of games too. Mario's nose is a great example of that. It's like anything round has a long tradition of being overemphasized in video games, and then once you get more realistic graphics, you adjust. Let's see. Paladin and Priest games and Rogue games. Now we need to win. I suppose need to actually get all of the daily quests done. I could get just 2 of them, but Friday in particular would be a great day to not have a long stretched out stream. Let's see, Gamma Sutra has an article here. Zelda's working on a direct Legend of the Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel. That's a little weird because this might be the first actual stated direct sequel to any of the Zelda games, and the Zelda games have had kind of a direct connection, a lineage of always doing something different. They had said that the main Zelda games were going to continue to look like Breath of the Wild because it was a major success. It could, though, feel very weird if 10 years from now there's just Breath of the Wild 1, Breath of the Wild 2, Breath of the Wild 3, and that is what Zelda is known to an entire generation as, and nobody even considers the earlier Zelda games to be the canonical Zelda games. I would counterbalance some of that concern, though, with the fact that they are making a more Game Boy-esque Zelda game also, or a remaster of an old Zelda game, so there's something else in development. But yeah, that's a little weird. Let's do, I guess, this. Komatsu has an article here. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order. Got some more coverage. I assume this is a new game since it's due out July 19th. Whereas I guess maybe this is a continuation of Marvel Ultimate Alliance. This very much might be the better Marvel game to come out in the next few years. That being said, Disney is going to probably license some more Marvel games to be made, whether they're mobile games or console games is a bit of a question. Let's see, we have a game on Steam here called Game Hunt that looks like a low effort asset flip platformer. It looks like garbage for 99 cents, English only. That's easily dismissed. Let's see, overkill. Combo. I guess I'll play that. We have the Contra Anniversary Collection on Steam. I don't really see how I don't put this on the wish list. I don't know if I really want to play much of Contra, frankly, but again, this is kind of a $20 expense that I think you could buy, and then you don't feel too bad for getting the ROM of these games and playing them on emulators. I saw a Japanese game that looked a lot like Contra if you were playing as a magical girl instead. It was a inspired by the Toho Project games, so perhaps that is my style of Contra, is when you're playing as a magical girl. But alright. Hit that.
Here we go.
Let's see. Next game we have on Steam is called Joust Mania, and it seems playable via the PlayStation light up sticks for the PlayStation Eye, which means you probably have to connect a whole bunch of specialized hardware to get this thing to work. Like, that's a Raspberry Pi with something plugged into it, and this is a battery pack running it. So there's no camera hooked up to this Raspberry Pi, so this has to be some kind of USB camera that's looking at the colors and controlling these things that change colors. Nobody uses these PlayStation Eye things. So, like, this isn't a game, it's free, but it's not a game that most people could play. You're trying to keep your unit still while making other people jostle theirs, which, well, if I was playing that game, I think I could win pretty easily. You look like you're going to either assault or grope somebody, and you'll get them to move pretty fast. But then I think nobody would let me play for very long at that. Even as a gameplay concept, though, this is dumb and overly complicated. It would be easier to, instead of having any electronics to this game, just have somebody have each person with an egg and a spoon. That it's the exact same game. Like, you have to balance an egg and spoon around and get the other people to drop their eggs. It's the exact same game without any technology. This is an example of nerds not being smart enough to realize that their ideas are overly complicated. So yeah, that's not making it to the wish list or fault list. Next game we have on Steam here is called Shattered Light, which looks like it might be an asset flip horror game, but it's polished pretty well, so there might be something here. That's the problem with these horror games now, is that they could actually be good. It requires VR, it's free to play. I'll put this on the follow list as a free VR experience and see if it gets any reviews, but even if it does get reviews, it's just going to stay on the follow list as a free VR experience. Alright. I need battle cries and combos.
This guy's toast.
The light protects me.
Okay. That's pretty much all I could do. Next game we have to consider is Age of Fear, the Undead King Gold, which looks like it's a simplistic real-time strategy game. I don't see anything interesting here, even if this is a remaster of something else. It seems simplistic and uninteresting. $20, English only. Yep, this is a game I think I can easily skip as my standards get increased. Alright. This. fill the field, I guess.
Too soon.
Just fill the field with enemies. Gamatsu has an article, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Nintendo Treehouse. Nintendo did do their Treehouse right in the middle of E3. I didn't think they were going to do that. I thought they were going to do one a week before and then that was it. This is the remake of the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening for the Switch. So, remake, remaster, looks really good. So the Breath of the Wild sequel in this game will come out pretty close. The question, I guess, comes down to how many Metroid games are going to get remade or released. It is worth noting that in the Nintendo Treehouse there was zero mention of the 3DS. So the fear is that the Nintendo 3DS at this point is dead. That there's nothing as far as no more real emphasis will be put on the 3DS, which makes sense. Like, the Switch is portable, you don't need the 3DS anymore. Nintendo is going to a one console system, and if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if they came out with a Switch Home version, something that is always docked and always more powerful but plays the same games as the Switch that is available now. Next we have a Gamatsu article, Animal Crossing New Horizons. So another Animal Crossing game being teased. It probably is past the point to buy a Switch if you plan to ever buy a Switch. I suppose there's a little bit more time to wait and see if there's really a new version of the hardware coming out, but probably by holiday this year, if you are ever going to buy a Switch, you probably should get in there and just buy a Switch.
Here
we go.
Next article we have Pokemon Sword and Shield. Looking at the Sword and Shield trailers, well, one of the images, the sword is the boy, shield is the girl. Sword is shown in blue, and the shield is shown in a kind of pink color. It feels heavily gendered in its labeling, and I doubt that was completely subconscious in the creator's mind. The bigger scandal, because that's not really a scandal, is these Pokemon that are kind of like raid bosses, from what I understand. They're huge, they're called like decks, and you have to work together to try and defeat them, and when you defeat them you have a chance of capturing them, and some of that element somehow also affected the Pokedex element,
So many options.
where you can't, it seems, in Sword and Shield capture all 1,000 or so Pokemon
Protects me.
that are out there in the previous series, and you can't transfer all of the Pokemon from that previous series into the game. So people seem to be not happy about that from an outsider looking in. I can't even really explain it completely, but yeah, it doesn't seem like the experience at Sword and Shield will be a traditional Pokemon gotta collect them all experience. I heard speculation, and I can really only label it speculation, that you have to catch the Pokemon that are in the new region first and beat the game, and then the old Pokemon might unlock, and then you can catch them all. Now, it would be very traditional that you, between purchasing, you would have to purchase both Sword and Shield to get all of the Pokemon possible. But this seems like even at that point, you still can't get everything that has been made. And so I don't know what Nintendo's really thinking there. Trying to take it in a different direction. It's weird that they didn't just stick with the let's go Pokemon concept, let's go Pikachu, let's go Eevee concept, and just say this is what Pokemon is now. A lot easier, a lot more simplified game. But I guess they just couldn't risk losing their built-in fan base of people who've played previous Pokemon games, which I guess is high. Moving on, check out there's an article. Contra Rogue Corps revives the Konami classic. So they released a Contra collection, and here's a new Contra game that really doesn't look anything like the old Contra game. It looks like it's maybe a mediocrely animated 3D shooter game. Maybe it's more of an RPG game. Game comes out for the PS4 Pro and PC and Xbox One and Switch on September 24th.
Choose soon. I fight.
I'll be interested in seeing if Contra Road Corps turns out to be a good game. I'm very iffy on it.
Folks, who goes there?
I fight.
Next we have an article here from Gamatsu. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Tactics announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This Netflix Dark Crystal revival seems to have inspired them to make a turn-based RPG game. I'm not sure how many people really would want to play that, but this is one of 2 Netflix games that were talked about at E3 so far. I don't think I've ever been able to sit through the Dark Crystal first movie. Did not look like something that would interest me. I guess it would be kind of hard though for Netflix to make a Labyrinth series, and the Jim Henson Company has to do something. Otherwise it's pretty much gonna just disappear for lack of new content. The Jim Henson Company in particular, as I understand it, is a prime example of why there should not be cronyism in the form of giving a company control to your children. Jim Henson died. His son, I think, took over the Jim Henson Company and did pretty terrible with it. I think his daughter eventually has control of it now. Maybe nobody from the Henson family actually has control over it. Same is true for Walt Disney. It's like nobody in the Walt Disney family, I think, has any direct control of Disney. Maybe they have some shareholding stakes. And yeah, I've never really seen an example of a child being able to even maintain the level of quality of product that is set up by a company like that. I would also argue, though, Jim Henson as a company has failed to just continue to experiment and try to make more things in the world of puppeteering, or find anybody who is actually good at puppeteering to try and take it and make more movies or TV shows. So they really did rest on their laurels.
Desperate seas I roam. Let me go home!
Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. The Sinking City is coming to Switch this fall. It's also due out for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC June 27th. The Sinking City, I think, is one of maybe 2 or 3 mystery games where the world is flooded or soon to be flooded. It's hard to even keep them straight in my head. All these hype articles and teases really not giving me useful bits of information.
Ha, this guy's toast. Hey, lights out.
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article. Spyro Reignited Trilogy is coming to the Switch and PC on September 3rd. Okay, yeah, I might put that on the wish list. I could see wanting to try to play these Spyro games since I've never played them before. I probably wouldn't spend a ridiculous amount of time on them. Maybe just spotlight them or play through them really quickly. Oh, I'm seeing an article here that reminded me of a different article. Apparently, Dr. Disrespect on Twitch was streaming from the inside of not 1 but 2 bathrooms inside of E3, and E3 security did not catch nor stop him, and there were definitely people using those bathrooms that were underage, so yeah, not cool. And so he is now banned from Twitch. Last time I heard.
Watch your back.
So yeah, I don't know if that's a permanent ban. It probably at this point should be. I can't think of anything else Dr. Disrespect has done, but he probably has done some other things. Hearthstone's maintenance was taking a little bit longer than usual, and so they had a tweet about that. It didn't really affect me. It kind of is almost an example of at least Activision Blizzard does a decent job on their maintenance. We don't have a lot of downtime for Hearthstone. We don't have unscheduled maintenance happening. We don't have any of that garbage that often accompanies
The light protects me.
so many other services. Gamatsu has an article here. Alien Isolation is coming to Switch in 2019. For a second there, I thought this announcement was Alien Colonial Marines was coming to Switch in 2019, and that sounded really ridiculous. It's still pretty ridiculous to report this game, which is pretty old. It's already available on PS4, Xbox One, PS3, 360, PC, Mac, and Linux. Speaking of Xbox 360, Microsoft has announced that they're going to be stopping their effort to port backward compatibility of Xbox 360 games. Frankly, they were probably scraping the bottom of the barrel already to make games backward compatible. So there's going to be, from what it seems like, one big push and to finish it up, and then they're going to spend the rest of their energy going forward focusing on just having games run smoothly via for Project Scarlet, which is fine. I don't really think there's anything from the Xbox One era or Xbox 360 era that hasn't been ported to backward compatibility that could be ported to backward compatibility. I imagine there's a bunch of games that have music licenses that have expired or just didn't sell well enough. And at a certain point you could just run into emulation and that would let you play those games if you're one of the few fans that really wants to play some lesser known style game. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here. Read-only memories Neurodiver has been announced for PC, a sequel to 2064 read-only memories. People, or at least the mainstream video game media, seem to like this game. Every time I looked at it, it didn't look particularly that interesting. Looks kind of just like a visual novel game with a retro art aesthetic. This still looks like a visual novel with a retro art aesthetic. I guess maybe there's enough relevancy there for me to try and cover it. Let's see. They skipped over Resident Evil 4 and announced that Resident Evil 5 and 6 as a bundle are coming to the Switch this fall. Well, I guess they didn't skip over Resident Evil 4 because they did port Resident Evil 4 to the Switch. So this to me seems like it was a bundle for both games. It would be hard pressed to see too many people wanting to buy 6. I could understand playing 5, particularly if the way that 4 doesn't run on my PC. But I definitely don't imagine too many people are gonna want to play 6. 6 ran terribly, and it was just not a good game in the first place. I'm having some real trouble getting victories here, so I should move on and try something different. I'm not exactly sure how to cover this article, but we'll just hit it straight on. Allegedly, the indie hit called Gender Wrecked, which I've never heard of, is heading to the Smithsonian. This is probably some SJW indie game that nobody really played, and I could see why it would be allowed in a museum, even the Smithsonian, because it probably has a good pitch that you could write up for it and say that it's super important and impactful. And a lot of other games are just generic games. This game is only on itch.io for $6.66. Yeah, I've not heard anybody talk about this though. And being in the Smithsonian doesn't inherently mean that it's going to be there for too long. So that is another thing to take from that. This might be a very temporary presentation. Or maybe I'm totally wrong about the game and there actually is a major element of quality in it. That being said, I really have to question a visual novel that looks like it garbage that probably was made by a Westerner making it to the Smithsonian, when visual novels like Clannad or Steins Gates that are major sellers, highly impactful, super important to the fandom of visual novels, gets overlooked completely. And this seems like a constant issue with visual novels in particular, is that they're getting overlooked if they're Japanese, to the point where it feels like it is just an anti-Japanese attitude. Don't want to get into a huge rant about that again, but yeah. Twitch support will now send you email summaries if you want them about how your stream went. I think that was really the only announcement on Twitch. Because of YouTube's new Content ID match that is open to more people, even if you're a Twitch streamer, you need to upload every single video as fast as possible to a YouTube channel with, it can be unlisted, but it needs to be on Google servers basically. Otherwise, Google will side with the other side and say, actually, no, they uploaded the video first, therefore it's their content and you stole it from them. And inherently, this is a case of a game, a case of a system that will lead to even more upsetness against YouTube and Google when they start sending out lots and lots of emails to people saying you stole this content, and when really it was the exact opposite situation. This definitely is something that would screw over Twitch streamers in particular. If there is Twitch streamers out there that are having their content stolen from Twitch and put on YouTube, you're gonna get treated pretty badly. And I cannot get a road victory. Let's try this cursed crew. Or maybe we should just go with Paladin and Priest. Game of Sutra has this article. We already talked about this. Microsoft ending Xbox One backwards compatibility efforts to focus on next gen. There's kind of no reason why something wouldn't be backwards compatible on both, but it does certainly show that their emphasis and their focus going forward will be on making Project Scarlet be successful. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the same spirit you'll start seeing less patches and less updates and less, I doubt there will be any new features at all of Xbox One hardware or software. TechRaptor has an article here. Nintendo Direct E3 recap. These are the games you're looking for. This is just like the full recap, but their recaps aren't amazingly good. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is coming to Switch. That will be interesting to see how well that works. A game called Daemon Ex Machina is coming out. Mario and Sonic at the Olympics 2020. We kind of knew that. So in total, Hollow Knight Silksong, Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch, Minecraft Dungeon, let's see, The Elder Scrolls Blades is coming to Switch, which is a mobile game. My Friend Pedro, Doom Eternal, The Sinking City, Wolfenstein Youngblood, Dead by Daylight, Alien Isolation, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Dragon Quest Builders 2, Stranger Things 3, the game, which is not the third Stranger Things games, but a game based on Season 3 of Stranger Things, which is a weird way to title it, certainly.
Here we go.
Hold it!
Just Dance 2020 is coming out. Catan is coming to the Switch. Super Lucky's Tale, Dauntless, and Super Mario Maker 2. So, on top of that, Banjo-Kazooie I think is going to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And yeah, I don't think there's really anything else to say about the Nintendo coverage. Let's see.
Hold it!
Here we go.
Arg.
Someone called.
Oh yes, there's a Luigi's Mansions 3 trailer came out too, it's pretty easy to forget that there was even a Luigi's Mansion 2, but yeah, that happened, and they're making a 3. There's a whole list of Nintendo games I'd like to play, but I'm almost certainly never going to get around to.
Hold it!
Let's see. Contra Rogue Corps is coming out for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC September 24th. A little bit more information from Gamatsu. Let's see. A Panzer Dragoon remake launches winter for the Switch. That's a little surprising. I don't think I caught that announcement. Panzer Dragoon being a kind of on-rail shooter where you're flying on a dragon. It was pretty popular. I think it's based off an arcade game where you're actually riding a dragon while playing. That probably will have a niche following. Let's see.
Desperate seas I
Let me
roam.
go home!
Let's see. Platinum Games showed off more of Astral Chain. So Astral Chain, the next game being developed by the developers of Bayonetta, instead of talking about Bayonetta 3, they're showing off this game, which might be an interesting game, but also it might just be a pretty generic Japanese RPG experience or action game experience. Seems like the characters are fighting more as themselves instead of summoning a robot or a persona to fight for them. Well, it seems a little bit of both. Seems like you're gonna have to literally chain down all the enemies while you're fighting. So.
Desperate seas I
Let
roam.
me go home!
Still don't really know a lot about Astral Chains. They had a game called Empire of Sin that it looks like kind of a gangster game. But this is just a trailer. Looks like the top of it, the real game is just a top-down shooter game. This might be the game I heard about where you play as different mobs and you're fighting for control of different rackets. So like one mob will be in charge of bootlegging, and one will be in charge of certain areas, and one will be in charge of another area. I'm getting victories. Let's try Paladin. Probably to less fanfare than it deserves, No More Heroes 3 was announced. That being said, it certainly lost a few points of enthusiasm when we had that No More Heroes spin-off game come out and feel like it was a bait and switch style game. I don't even know what that was called, but this does look like an actual No More Heroes 3. The graphics don't really inherently look much better than what the No More Heroes 1 or 2 looks like in my mind. I'm probably wrong about that. It probably does look slightly better. That being said, also, since this is a Nintendo announcement, that means that you probably can only play the No More Heroes trilogy on the Switch at this point, where you could have played No More Heroes 1 or 2 on the I think it was on the Xbox or the PlayStation. I don't think it's coming to PC. I imagine it uses some of the waggle controls or the Joy-Cons quite heavily, in the same way that No More Heroes 1 was best played with the Wii controller. I think we probably already had the release date, but Cadence of Hyrule launches June 13th. For people with Rhythm that are hyped about that game, it sounds like people are pretty fairly hyped about it, which I understand. Even though I don't have Rhythm and probably would never play that game. Let's see. The Mana series is coming to the Switch, so Trials of Mana, a remake of the third game in the series, is coming, and I think there's going to be a Mana collection, so it'll be Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana, and I think a third game.
Let me think.
Although, perhaps a little questionable. So, Final Fantasy Adventure apparently was the first of Mana game. And then that is the first one I think that didn't get released in the West. No, Trials of Mana is the first one is the one that not coming to the West. Okay. These are like 8-bit old games now, so you're gonna have to probably have some nostalgia to play some of these in this collection. If this came to PC instead of Switch, I could see myself buying it and then trying the games and kind of quickly rage quitting off of the games
For justice.
for them being too long and too old. Let's see. Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Do we have a release date now? September 20th, 2019. Interesting. If you get the limited edition run, you get a steel book that looks like a Game Boy, and a big old book, 120 page art book. That's probably not a terrible deal. Looks like this is a Europe only limited edition. So one of the Final Fantasy limited editions didn't look particularly good for what you were getting. And one of the Cyberpunk 2077 limited edition packages didn't look too good. And I am happy to say that for the most part, most of these announcements aren't shilling collectibles and limited editions. That's probably not in a small part due to the US tariffs and trade war with China. If you can't get cheap garbage and collectibles and plastic things from China cheaply, you can't then charge a ridiculous price to sell them at 5,000% markup.
Reporting for duty.
Let's see. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Complete Edition is coming to Switch, so all the DLC is coming with it, which makes sense. Makes quite a bit of sense. I'm going through a lot of pages here that are just saying the same thing again. And none of these announcements really had any bit of information in them, so well, this is interesting because this is what Trials of Mana looks like now, so it must be a remaster. It's not particularly much more than a mobile remaster though. It's certainly not hyper realistic graphics. And that remaster is coming in 2020. For several different things.
Don't test me, child. Reporting for duty.
Smash Bros. Is also getting the Ultimate Dragon Quest hero. Since the hero in Dragon Quest doesn't have a name, it's this guy that you play as, but he's never a named character. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some other Dragon Quest characters added to Smash Bros. Smash Bros. I guess has this problem of an issue where it's going to have to completely it's going to have to
I can't win them all.
completely continue to add content forever and ever until the next Smash game comes out. Like, I think you just have to support it. The question right now is what's going to happen to Splatoon 2, since they're not adding any more content for that. They really could have teased the Splatoon 3 at this announcement at the Nintendo Treehouse.
Uther versus Rexar.
YouTube claims
I will fight with honor.
that they're working on notifications. There's an article here I'm looking at. It's not worth showing because it's just a bunch of text, and frankly believing YouTube on anything is a dumb thought. So yeah, maybe notifications will get improved, but I doubt it.
I'll never tell.
See, Gamatsu has an article, eFootball PES, Pro Evolution Soccer 2020 has been announced for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. So yeah, Pro Evolution Soccer still getting releases. No big surprise there. Let's see, we already talked about that, and that, and that, and that. I'm hoping I'm gonna run into just a ton of redundant articles so that I can close all the articles and wrap up this stream really early, but that's unlikely to happen. Meanwhile, we still need to go to the Asian town to do the Tavern Brawl. Let's see.
Follow the rules.
Gamatsu has an article here. Black Desert is coming to the PS4 in 2020. Black Desert Mobile launches globally 2019. I don't know why it's just being called Black Desert instead of Black Desert Online, because the only Black Desert I know is Black Desert Online. So unless this is a completely different game than that moderately popular MMO, I don't know. It's tagged as an MMORPG. It certainly would be weird trying to jump into an MMORPG after it being out for many years. It'd be like me trying to jump into World of Warcraft right now, having never played it before. You know, I was thinking about the new DLC for Borderlands 2 that lets you jump up to level 30 and expands the max level to 80. Being able to do that now, that really is an admission by Gearbox that the first 30 levels don't matter at all in Borderlands. And it's starting at level 30. I don't think would have all of your skills unlocked, but it would certainly have enough skills that you would have a bit of an experience there as your first move. What you would want to do to maximize that is you would have had to been playing up until this point to find level 30 gold key legendary rare guns, put them in the locker near Claptrap's hovel where Claptrap resides in Sanctuary, because that's where you can transfer guns to other characters in your game. And then had you had the foresight to do that when you had another character at level 30 and you were just grinding at level 30 to get those kind of guns, you could have a decent starting position for the new DLC for a new style of character. What this doesn't really work for is an idea of potentially someone who's never played Borderlands 2 before is jumping their characters to level 30 and jumping into that final bit of DLC before they did anything else, or somebody who hasn't been saving level 30 good guns, and so you're just gonna have a mediocre experience with a new character class. And I don't think people would want to do that a lot. Unless the DLC really does something different, I don't think you would want to do that with the 6 different character classes so you can play each one of them. And even if you did do it with the 6 different character classes available to play on Borderlands 2, that really isn't going to be an experience you can replicate when you run into Borderlands 3, because you're still going to have to pick a new character class from a new selection of character classes and start at level 1 and just play the game the way everybody else has been playing Borderlands games. It seems like it's kind of wasteful that there are so many character classes and there's not an easy way just to change your character into a different character class. Which is what I'd really like to see happen. Is I'd like to be able to take my character from Borderlands 2 and convert it into a new character class with the same guns and the same levels, same badass rank and such.
Put your faith in the light. I don't have enough now.
So I'm gonna lose.
Job's done.
Moving on, Square Enix had a Dragon Quest XI Definitive Edition is coming to the Switch. This would be called Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age Switch S Definitive Edition. So, yeah, it's a huge mouthful for a title. But this also does not in any way look like Dragon Quest XI. This is what Dragon Quest XI looks like. So I don't understand how you can switch between graphics, but apparently you can. Apparently it's somehow you can switch between this and that. And that's weird. Yeah, it features 2 graphical modes, modern polygonal graphics on top or 16-bit sprites on bottom. This is the 3DS version, lets you do that. So maybe they converted the 3DS mode to the Switch version. And I'm struggling to get victories. Well, Komatsu has an article here. A TurboGrafx 16 Mini / PC Engine Core Graphics Mini / PC Engine Mini have all been announced. So, 3 very lesser known consoles have been announced by Konami because Konami sucks, for lack of a better term, and they're just trying to rip people off. I doubt there's even a list here of what games are going to be on it. Okay, there is a list. TurboGrafx Mini has about 5 announced right now, none of which look really interesting. PC Mini has about 5 games announced right now, none of which are interesting. I think you are probably a total and complete sucker if you buy more than 2 mini versions of consoles, unless you just have major nostalgia and had some of the other consoles. Like, I get the NES Mini, I understand that. I get the Super NES Mini, I get the Sega Master System Mini. Anything else though, and even getting all 3 of those, after that point, you're really just throwing your money away, it feels like. Gamasutra has a job listing, which is a little surprising in the middle of E3. New World Interactive is hiring a head of production. This is in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I'm not sure exactly what New World makes or has made. Let's see.
I'll never tell.
Job's done.
Gamasutra has an article here. New Nintendo of America President Doug Bowser speaks against crunch. Quote, "We also need to make sure that as an industry we're having those conversations," end quote. That's, you're speaking against crunch. When talking to IGN, not really much of a story here, but also I would say Nintendo is probably the least crunchy video game company out there. They have money to lose, and let's be honest here, Nintendo doesn't really make as many games as you would think, because they hire out other companies, and it's probably very much a don't know, don't tell situation. That don't ask, don't tell type situation, where if they're hiring somebody to make the next Metroid Prime game, for instance, there very possibly is a lot of crunch happening for that third-party developer. Game of Sutra has another article, how bad crediting hurts the game industry and muddles history. This is probably in response to a story going around that Xseed will take your name off the credits if you leave the company before the game is released. I've heard a few companies have done that. Atari basically put nobody's names on the credits for a very long time, or most of its run. I think it's very easy and generous, particularly in the video game world, to credit people, because it's not like it's a union thing that means they get residuals or a higher pay or anything like that, as far as I understand it. It's simply a matter of being decent and saying, yes, this person worked with us during the time we were working on this project, or they worked specifically on this project. Frankly, since if the credits are presented well, I don't care if the temp employee who worked for one day and then got fired, I don't care if their name gets put on the credits or not. Like, that's perfectly fine for me, and that's just a nice thing to do. Like, the main problem is if you get to like movie credits where only a certain number of names can be on the screen at one per frame. Video game credits really should be 3 or 4 columns of names when it gets to long sections, and just, yes, your name is here, but you would have to pause and take a screenshot, frankly, to see it, because there's just so many other names on the screen at the same time. It is a little weird that Xseed, in particular, being a Japanese company, would stoop to such lows, but it's not uncommon for Japanese companies to treat their employees terribly. That's pretty common. Moving on, Gematsu has an article. Hero Land launches this fall in the West. This looks like another RPG of some sort. From Xseed Games, actually. Yep. This looks like it might be slightly interesting. I guess there is a bigger question here, is should a game consumer blacklist Xseed because they don't credit their employees? There's probably thousands of things you purchase that people don't get credit for making. The people who sew the clothes you purchase, the people who like refine the oil you put in your car, people who build your car, people who built your house that you're living in, or the building you're standing in. Like, it's millions and millions of things that don't get credited. Lego designers sometimes get credit for the designs they make in the instruction book, but mostly that's Lego ideas. Certainly there's not a long list of names in the instruction books that I've ever seen of people who worked on Lego designs, for another comparison. So as a bigger thought, there's actually lots and lots of people that probably deserve more credit than they get. Pretty much everybody. Game Sutra comes out and says it directly. Nintendo's E3 Direct had nothing new for the 3DS. So, yeah, we saw that. I am seeing the end of the tunnel as far as news. We haven't even gone to the Asian account yet.
Uther versus Jaina.
Let's see.
You asked for it.
Here's a
I
game
will
that came out
fight
during
with
E3
honor.
called Hilda Bewildered. Which looks like it's probably a low effort troll game is what I thought it was, but I don't know what this is. Short story for deep thinking adolescents, readers, and above. I think this is a troll game. I have no idea. I'll put this on the fall list and see if anybody reviews it. It's discounted to $2.69. It says it has full English audio. Yeah, I thought that was definitely a troll game when I first looked at it. But looks like there might be more here. Now, the thing about Twitch that I still don't know how it actually works is it's possible that a considerably large number of games actually did come out on Steam, and I just didn't see those posts because so many other posts about E3 happened. So this definitely is a time frame where games might get overlooked. That really is the fault of the publisher of the game as much as anything else. I can't really feel too guilty about missing a game that released itself right in the most hectic part of the year. Next game we have on Steam is called Bayani Fighting Game, which looks visually interesting and pretty polished, so I think it deserves a follow. Although, in all fairness, a lot of fighting games on the fall list that never come out of early access and frankly just don't have a AAA publisher behind them to have a chance of being good enough to catch enough people's attention to then have some kind of fan base. This game is local multiplayer only also, so unless it gets online multiplayer, you're in a weird position with that also where it can't possibly be that popular. And I won't bother to show this next game, but there's a game that came out on Steam called Hentai Sudoku, which I have to applaud them for at least getting a little bit more unique in what they're doing, where this time it's a Sudoku number crossword puzzle that you have to solve, and as you solve it, the background fills in with a anime girl in a lewd position or a lewd amount of dress. Game is tagged with nudity. It's 59 cents discounted. Of course, it's not a game still that you'd want to buy, but at least it's not a low effort slide puzzle.
The light protects me.
Or jigsaw puzzle.
Reporting for duty. For justice.
The game Closers for the PlayStation 4 is now available for in Japan. From Gamatsu. Maybe there's a full article that I opened there. Maybe not. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Space Invaders Invincible Collection is the first 6 titles announced. So Space Invaders, which was black and white, Part 2, which was in color, then 97, the DX, then Extreme, then Space Cyclone, which I haven't heard of that one. there will be other titles added to it. That might be the best way to buy all the Space Invader games. If you really need to buy all the Space Invader games, which is questionable. Frankly, I kind of look at the Space Invader games as a historical artifact, but not something that you would really want to play for more than 5 minutes. Maybe the later versions of the game. Matsu has some real details in this. Trials of Mana is the most action-heavy game in the series and is fully voiced, and it's a remake coming out early 2020. So this might be an actual effort to bring back the Mana series instead of just publishing it. It's coming out for the PS4, Switch, and PC. Yeah, the re-releases of the previous Mana series didn't go particularly well. So I could see trying to right the ship and have a new one come out.
I fight.
Gamma Sutra has an article. According to a report, tariffs have prompted Nintendo to move some Switch production out of China. I wouldn't be surprised if that's true for a lot of things, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more stories like this in general until the US-China trade war is finished, which could be a while. Let's see. Netflix put out this teaser image of the Stranger Things game. This is the Stranger Things mobile game, not to be confused with the Stranger Things console game, which is a location-based RPG puzzler. And I kind of like this animation style, but it sounds like the mobile game is going to be something along the lines of a Ingress or Pokemon Go style game.
Job's done.
And then this other picture they put out of Stranger Things 3, the game. It looks very pixely and is a very different art style than what we just saw. Netflix getting into video games is probably not a great idea, but it might do some things. Might throw out some new ideas and do something. Next we have a game on Steam called Virtual Reality Emergency Response Sim, which is an interesting idea, but this looks pretty much like a complete asset flip piece of garbage game. I don't frankly know if it's incredibly smart to have young children playing games where they pretend to be police or firemen or ER or ambulance medics, because then that might inspire confidence that they can do something that they're not trained to do. There's a lot of training you want your police and your firemen and your EMTs to be able to accomplish and have.
Close the gates.
Darn it, I played that wrong.
Job's done.
Gamma Sutra has an article here. Steam developers can start uploading assets for the new library layout. The new library was kind of leaked, and so I've seen a little bit of it, and it seems like everybody has. The main thing is it is taking the banner image that you've been using for your Steam page and then kind of just stretching and blurring it to make it look more linear and like a video game cover. And that's a little ugly, so they're trying to get new game developers to upload new art to make it look better for the new library layout, which seems like it's going to be pretty helpful and useful for organizing a large list of games like what I have, and just better looking in general. I'm pretty sure there's a software called Shelves that there are some collection organization softwares that usually don't let you link to an actual game or file, but let you do present your virtual list of DVDs or games or books that you have very nicely. It's surprising that Steam or some other company hasn't bought out half of those companies and used their sorting software and their technology to improve their own library. I guess maybe the idea is generic enough they can do it themselves if they spend the effort to it. What this will inherently do is eventually we will see some games that never update their art, and I think that will be a red flag to Valve that the developers are not responding to their emails that they're almost certainly getting saying, hey, update your art, hey, update your art. And that might eventually lead to a triggering factor of Valve saying, you know what, this person is gone. They're not bothering to even maintain the imagery in their storefront to look pretty, and maybe they'll eventually kick those people off of Valve, but I think that would take quite a long time. I'm gonna switch over to the Asian account here. We only have a little bit more to talk about. Well, it's a decent amount, and it doesn't look like I'm gonna get that third Paladin victory on screen, so let's move over and I'll have to do it off screen. Meanwhile, let's close all these.
There you are! Back from your adventures?
Close all these duplicate games articles. I have been logging in pretty much every day and re-rolling. Seems like it's just harder nowadays to get a 60 gold quest. Now that the single player expansion has come out, they possibly reduced the percentages of getting one of those quests. Daily quests, in a weird way, are just another form of loot boxes, and they're not really putting out any information about that. Let's see. Komatsu has an article. Sekai Games announces new titles: Root Double Before Crime, After Days for Switch, and Undead Darlings for PS4, and more. So there's a game called Project Lux for the PlayStation VR, Root Double Before Crime, After Days for the Switch. Let's see what this trailer is. I definitely did not see this talked about during the Nintendo Direct, so this is something that just came out later. Yep, this looks just like a visual novel. And just an anime visual novel murder mystery. Vault Milestone 1 is coming out for the PS4 and Vita and Switch. And Tokyo Chronos is coming out for the PlayStation VR. Heart of the Woods is coming out for the Switch. See, this makes a lot more sense, frankly. It's just, if you are a publisher like Sekai Games, to have your own presentation. Let's see. World in Economica is coming out for the Switch, PS4, and Vita. Let's see. Narcissu Lemire Eternal Edition. Oh, let me just show that. It's coming out for the Switch and PS4. Undead Darlings is coming out for the PS4. Like, none of their games are coming out for the PC, unfortunately. So they're not a PC developer, is what I'm getting from that. but I would say Sekai Project probably shouldn't have announced all their games in the middle of E3 at all, but had they announced them a week from now, 2 weeks from now, they would have been much bigger news. Like, we definitely should look at what the news looks like a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 months from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now even, and just realize how little news is going to start coming out after E3 happens. But there might be some games that come out, so that might be their replacement.
Converting stored energy. Photonic burst.
Let's see, we have an article here, Daemon Ex Machina gameplay. We can look at what this is. It looks like it's probably a mech RPG style game. Yep. Looks like you're flying around in basically a Robotech outfit, fighting enemies. Nothing particularly special about that, or interesting. According to this article in Gamma Sutra, Breath of the Wild sequel is partially inspired by Red Dead Redemption 2. I would think if it's too inspired by Red Dead Redemption 2, there might be a lawsuit, and it might not feel very much like a Zelda game at that point. TechRaptor has an article, Gloomhaven launches on Steam Early Access July 17th. Do I really need an announcement for Early Access? No. And Gloomhaven doesn't, from this screenshot, look very interesting anyways. Alright, play this. And play
What
that.
is my purpose?
This one is interesting because I was talking about Stardock's legal dispute when looking at Star Control on the fall list. So had I waited even a couple days, I would have had something different to say there. All I was able to say is I haven't heard anything about that lawsuit in a while, so like, I don't know what else to take from that other than I haven't heard anything about it.
I comply.
So TechRaptor has an article, Stardock settles legal dispute with Star Control creators. From what I recall, the mainstream media was definitely on the side of Fred Ford and Paul Reich III, calling them Star Control creators when Stardock was alleging that they definitely were just work for hire employees and not the creator. Let's see if maybe we can maybe get some information about how this boils down.
Converting stored energy.
Let's see. Let's see, the original creators escalated their case in December last year with a DMCA takedown of Stardock's Star Control Origins. About a month later, the game was back on Steam, but the legal battle was still mostly under wraps, as Stardock CEO Brad Wardell commented on Twitter at the time. Let's see. Now we know that the dispute was settled amicably in a way that fans of Star Control and the Orquan Masters are the biggest winners, according to a blog post by Fred Ford and Paul Reich. I guess we're still calling those the Star Control creators. The designers confirmed that they're no longer challenging Stardock's right to the IP while stating that the development of their own spiritual successor, the Orquan Masters, will
You asked
continue.
for it.
The designers claim to be happy and relieved that the settlement has been reached, assuring that there will be no further issues for the fans of the franchise. Perhaps most interesting, both parties describe that there's a paragraph in the document about bees as Brad Wardell and is giving Fred and Paul money from his own beehives, and Paul will give Paul and Brad some bottles of homemade mead, which that's a weird thing to negotiate in a contract, certainly.
Is someone injured?
So, yeah, apparently they came to some kind of cross-licensing agreement or an agreement to no longer pursue issues here. It was really strange that the original creators were putting out a DMCA to release a game on Steam, and it is really an example of how Valve kind of just ignored the DMCA after a while and put the game back up. And so it really goes to show how cowardly YouTube acts. On the other hand, Valve actually makes money when games are sold on Steam way more than than YouTube makes money when people put videos on YouTube. I was hoping that this would have gone further as a perhaps precedent-setting DMCA maneuver, one way or the other, but it could have very well been a terrible precedent that was set. And like most legal disputes, they do disappointingly end with a whimper instead of a bang. There was an incident where a YouTuber was assaulted, and the police didn't want to do anything about it, and he was trying to sue the person, and some form of settlement was reached, but all that could be said was kind of just a generic we've come to an agreement statement, and that was it. Like there was no big resolution or anything. So, you know, very, very undramatic, for lack of a better term, and unsatisfactory. That's true for almost every YouTube lawsuit that's been threatened or done. It's nobody has the money or the time to really pursue a lawsuit all the way to the end, unless it's just a case of it is going to be forced to be pursued to the end because there's neither side will settle. And usually one side either runs out of money or decides it's not worth their time. Next, we have a game on Steam called Puzzle Time Lovely Girls, which is just anime girls on a jigsaw puzzle field, but they're being a little bit more creative here. This looks consistent in like new art, and it's actual jigsaw puzzles instead of slide puzzles. Although for that new creativity, they want $4.49, which is quite a high price for what is effectively still a garbage game that nobody should buy. Come on, let me win. So Terracraptor has the article. I talked about this at the beginning of the stream. Ooblets steps away from Double Fine, will now self-publish on PC and consoles. So I don't know how much Ooblets was really getting from Double Fine as far as support or funding. I don't know how much support or funding Double Fine can really give. Ooblets is supposed to be something of a Pokemon clone, but it kind of seems to also be partially a Stardew Valley game. It seems like they're definitely going in different ways, having dance parties and such. There might be a game here that's good. There might not. It's been in development for quite a while. That's also a consideration. Something to think about and worry about is just how long in development has this game been out there. Gamasutra has an article. Epic Games has acquired the group video chat platform House Party. I've never heard of House Party, but it's another acquisition by Epic Games. Maybe it'll be integrated directly into the let's see. Maybe it will be directly integrated into the what am I trying to think of? Into the Epic Store or Fortnite. We have a game on Steam here called Vegas Slots. Looks like it might be a decent slot game. The question is, does it have in-app purchases, and does it have any variety in the slot machines? Looking at the screenshot, it seems like it's just one slot machine, which is pretty boring. Early access for a game that really has no business being in early access, 59 cents discounted. No in-app purchases, yes, but clearly this is not a game that's going to get enough work into it to be an interesting slot machine game you'd want to play on PC. There's still Wheel of Fortune Slots is a much better offer on your cell phone as a free game that doesn't gamble with real money. Let's open this. We got all the Tavern Brawls done. Although now that Tavern Brawls are longer, it kind of doesn't even matter. As long as I just make sure to get them done at some point during the week. And of course I've had no time to do any kind of hsreplay.net deck rebuildings, which I should do. And I just won't have any time for at least another week. I need to play Hunter class cards. And after I get that one done, I think that probably will be everything we have to cover today, because I'm about to run out of news. Gamatsu has an article. Fire Emblem 3 Houses was announced. This one looks like possibly an interesting game that they just started to announce and talk about.
I will fight with honor.
I'm not sure if any of the Fire Emblem games have ever come off Nintendo consoles though to PC, and so I don't know if I could really play it anywhere else. Well, that is kind of the first two cards you want when playing Hunter. TechCraft has an article. Commandos 2 and Praetorians HD remasters have been announced. I haven't heard of either one of these games, so they sound like real-time strategy games from a long time ago that weren't particularly that popular even then.
I moves quickly.
Again, this is an example of a game that has no business announcing remasters or re-releases right now in the middle of E3. This is something that would have made a lot more heads turn a week from now, 2 weeks from now. Let's see. Komatsu has the Burger Time Party trailer, which I still want to see some more examples of this new Burger Time game because I kind of like the art style. I want to see how it actually plays. It's a Switch trailer though, so you're not really seeing much. And it really does look like it is pretty much just Burger Time with new graphics. Doesn't seem like the game changes much or all. Let's see. Kibo's Trip, Hellbound, and Debriefed launches this winter. This is the first game being re-released for the PS4 and PC. And there's a trailer here. And so we'll see the gameplay of stripping these emotional vampires of their clothing. That's... This trailer is very much integrated with a bunch of cartoon cutscenes. That didn't really show much of anything. Let's see. TechCraft has an article here. Epic Games Store extending weekly giveaways program, adding more games. So clearly their giveaways program is not bringing in enough people to the storefront. Apparently it's going to be giving away all of these games. Although this is being reported kind of in a weird way because I don't think that there was really a direct statement that they weren't going to add more games to their program. That they probably just said, here's the first year's worth of games we plan on giving away per month, and now they've just extended that list of games for the next year.
Tazdingo! Yes!
Let's see. Deal 3 damage. +5. TechRaptor has some terrible news here. Watch Dogs Legion will not feature any actual dogs, which seems crazy. You would want to put at least one dog in the game somewhere for a game called Watch Dogs. I was talking about how in the last recording I felt that they were being deceptive and dishonest, saying you could play as any character in Watch Dogs Legions, any character in the entire world. Apparently what they have done is they have made a new system that shifts and kind of auto-tunes the voices from the voice actors based on some characteristics. So an old female talking to like a young female in the game might be saying the exact same lines of dialogue from the exact same voice actor they recorded it as, but there's some kind of algorithm in it that makes the old female sound maybe a little bit lower frequency and lower pitched, and the young female might be a little bit faster and higher pitched. So much so that you won't even recognize that they claim when one voice actor is speaking to themselves, which is definitely a big claim, but it's not as big of a claim as what it felt like they were it would have had to been, which is that they for thousands and thousands of characters that you may potentially play as. They had recorded thousands and thousands of different voices.
Let the hunt begin.
It still probably is a case of a lot of it being hidden and them just hoping you don't run into any bad scenarios, and it may still very well not work very well. But I think I was wrong in my first assumption that Watch Dogs Legion was going to have 4 main characters that spoke, and then thousands of characters that you could play as, but they don't have any voiced lines, or they wear a mask when they're speaking that changes their voice, or they wear a mask that changes their face or hides their face. The physical differences don't surprise me. It's been pretty easy to have different looking characters do the same action models. It's the voices element that's new. But yeah, why does Watch Dogs not have dogs? At least one. Next, we have an article from TechRaptor. Wasteland 3 is coming to console and PC spring 2020. So, I'm not really sure what the Wasteland series is. I saw a trailer for this game. But, yeah, there's definitely both some ignorance on my part and some instances of people just bringing back games I've never really seen, or playing games that or releasing like they're releasing sequels to games that haven't had sequels or been out for a very long time. Let's see. TechRaptor has another article. New Fallout 76 NPCs will have dialogue trees and romance options, like a standard NPC. Although it would have been very believable if the NPCs for Fallout 76 really only said a few things and acted as traders to sell and buy things from. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Harvest Moon Mad Dash has some screenshots and tidbits. So Harvest Moon Mad Dash is still in development. I think we've already heard about it. Let's see. It's a color matching puzzle game spin-off, so it's not even a Harvest Moon style game. Yeah, but the people who own the rights to Harvest Moon really haven't been doing anything good with that. And in recent history, at least. TechRaptor has an article, spinning epic tale with Assassin's Creed Odyssey's story creator mode. If I had more time, I'd read this article and try to figure out what the story creator mode is. It seems to me like it's a simplified mod tool of sorts to try to get people to make more content for their game, instead of, Ubisoft, the people you're paying to make the content. They're adopting the Skyrim approach of making a bare bones experience, and I wouldn't say that Assassin's Creed Odyssey was extremely bare bone, but it probably was more bare bone than the story than it should have been. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Psychonauts 2 is looking like a fantastic mind-bending trip. It sounds like the people who played Psychonauts 1 are getting back into the spirit and liking Psychonauts 2. Although Psychonauts 2 also starts right after the events of the VR game Rhombus of Reason, which a lot of people won't have played, so that's slightly problematic also. since I've never played Psychonauts 1 and planned on playing it, I might be in a slightly good position to buy Psychonauts 2 when it comes out and have the ideal experience that most people won't. Because everybody else will have been waiting for a sequel for, like, I think a decade now. TechRaptor has an article, you can't catch them all in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Let's see. If I can explain this. You'll be able to transfer Pokemon to Sword and Shield from the new Pokemon Home mobile service. Unfortunately, that comes with a big asterisk. You can only transfer Pokemon which have already been included in the Sword and Shield Galar Pokedex. Home will accept Pokemon from the 3DS's Pokebank, as well as from the Pokemon Let's Go Eve and Pikachu. The Galar is, I guess, the region Pokedex, and so what does that mean in practical terms? The article asks. Well, if you move Pokemon from your 3DS Pokemon Bank service to home, and they're not in the Galar Pokedex, they're stuck there. You can't send them back, and you can't put them on Sword and Shield either. Pokemon Home will have a trading feature which will allow users to trade Pokemon via the cloud. That's nice and everything, but if you transfer your Pokemon to home, it's just sitting there until Nintendo releases a new Pokemon game, or until some sort of new functionality is punctured into Sword and Shield. So this sounds like a standard example of Nintendo being bad with network services, although this might be more the Pokemon company's fault. So Pokemon Bank from Nintendo 3DS, which I guess would be the most recent Pokemon games, can transfer to Pokemon Home. Pokemon Go can transfer to Pokemon Home, and Pokemon Let's Go and Pikachu and Eevee can transfer to Home. But only Pokemon Home can transfer back and forth to Sword and Shield, and only in part in that case too.
To my side.
Let's see. The reasoning, the article continues, is pretty simple. In the live stream, Masuda says the transactions to the Switch hardware allowed the team to be much more expressive with each of the individual Pokemon. As such, the team didn't want to ramp up on development time applying this treatment to over 800 Pokemon. Instead, they decided to focus on a smaller number to make sure they were able to release the game in a timely manner. So basically, they didn't have enough manpower and time to improve the graphics on all the existing Pokemon, so a lot are getting left behind. And it doesn't seem like people are happy about this. This will be the first time since Pokemon Ruby and Pokemon Sapphire in 2002 that you won't be able to have all of your Pokemon transferred into one form or another. For over 15 years, collectors have been able to transfer Pokemon forward and back between games, but now Pokemon Sword and Shield marks the end of that streak. Yeah, and that sounds like that kind of sucks as an experience. I could definitely imagine not being happy about that, or hardcore Pokemon fans being upset about that, and they seem to be upset. Maybe they'll eventually patch it in. in the end, there is some weirdness about how close are we? We need to play just, looks like, a few more hunter cards, so let's play one more game. You can't change Pokemon, really, and it needs to be changed. That's why the Let's Go Pokemon games particularly look very interesting to me. It's an idea of we'll make it easier and more attractive to more people without irritating the existing fan base, which is going to be stuck in its ways. And I don't really see why they couldn't have just said the old Pokemon are just going to look like the old models. Just, we're not going to put a lot of work into them. They're going to stand out as looking weird. That would have been a better solution than saying, well, we don't have the manpower to make them look better, therefore we're just going to block the old Pokemon. Sorry, I've been talking way too much for weeks now. TechRaptor has an article here. Don't worry, you won't actually have to kill anyone in Cyberpunk 2077. I wouldn't be surprised if that's because there's a pacifist mode. Here's Keanu Reeves as a character who probably doesn't play much of a role, if any role, in the game. I assume he'll show up at some point. Keanu Reeves, pretty universally loved appearance at E3, so he walked out on stage, everybody was excited, and made a short couple sentence speech, and then that was that for him. Which is all you, I guess, need if you're going to have a celebrity make an appearance at a game conference. You don't really need them to do a full speech. Let's see. Moving on, TechCraft has an article. From Software Dark Souls series has shipped over 25 million units worldwide. What games does that include? Though, does that include Bloodborne, or is that just Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 and the remasters? Because that's still a good amount amongst maybe 6 games. Not incredibly good if there are actually 6 games, though. That'd be less than 5 million each on average. But even slightly less than 5 million each is still an amazingly good amount of sales. And weirdly, Zen Studios, makers of Zen Pinball, have announced a different game called Castle Storm 2 in development. Don't really know much about it otherwise, though, so yeah. They're trying something different. Meanwhile, they still have the license, and they recently got the license to a bunch of real-world pinball tables, so they have to support Pinball FX more. I assume that's Zen Studios that does Pinball FX. If it isn't, then I've really confused pinball companies. And that puts me on the Humble Bundle store, and yeah, there's no new Humble Bundle. So then that'll put me back at the at my Twitter feed, and I'll just scroll through the Twitter feed as we work to finish this gameplay and then end the stream. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4 cards played.
I hunt alone.
see if there's any bits of new news that needs to be talked about. There might not really be any bits of new news. Let's see. Gematsu has an update on the Grandia HD collection, which is probably just a release date. Yeah, I could be very surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if there's really no new news on Friday, and if we have a pretty simplistic and easy Friday otherwise to talk about. Alright, let's see. Where is the page that just opened? Guess it would be here. See, gameplay screenshots and information tidbits for Grandia HD update. So not really an announcement of much of anything. Anything that I really need to talk about. Let's play this, and this, and this. Visual novel came out on Steam. Don't probably need to talk about that, but we might. We can save that for Friday, certainly. Yeah, I don't even think there's any new news. Unless, again, my Twitter feed is messed up and tweets are out of order again. Like, barely 5 new announcements. Oh, I should have put this in the middle. That was bad gameplay. Well, I'm kind of glad to be done with news, because that gives me an ability to just move forward. And this visual novel game tagged with sexual content doesn't even support English, so this can't go on the wish list. Here, we can show it. It's called Yume Susu Remasters. There's a anime called Remasters that I don't think has anything to do with this. Like, English not supported, coming soon, Japanese only. So yeah, that game can't go on the fall list. Yep. And yeah, there's literally no other news to talk about, so I'm in a pretty good place as far as Hearthstone, but I do need to go to the European account and get one more victory. And we went through all the news, and it does feel like Friday will be a simpler, shorter experience. It probably won't be super short, but a little bit shorter. So we're done with this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. Click that notification bell. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.